To call to order this meeting of the Knoxville-Knox County Council on Aging. And we are going to proceed with our executive committee report. Your executive committee met before this meeting, and we have recommendations for allocations for the 2021 to 2022 Older Americans Act funds. And our recommendation is that we approve full funding for these programs, depending on how much we actually receive. If we receive more, it will be adjusted upwards. If we receive less, we will have to retract. So that's our recommendation based on our virtual site visits, as well as the forms that these groups filled out. So what we'd like to do is, due to COVID and some being on phone and some being on Zoom, we are going to, instead of calling for all those in favor, we are going to make it available for, if there's anyone who disagrees with the allocation of funds, I invite you to speak forward now. Go ahead.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, what?
Are you talk to me?
I think he's just logging on.
Okay, all right.
I'll go ahead and
Okay, so we are going to take that as approval and that the motion has passed, that these recommendations go forward. Thank you for that. And now I will give it over to Dottie Livers for our Office on Aging report.
Good afternoon. I'm Dottie Livers, Director of the Office on Aging. I hope everyone is doing well today. I just have a few quick things to share with you. First of all, and most important, or most recent, I should say, is O'Connor Senior Center will be hosting their annual Pancake Fest event and actually Senior Expo this year. It'll be a drive-through event, a little bit different than normal. That'll be next Friday, April 16th from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Tickets are $5 a piece, and basically that gets you a box full of lots and lots of pancakes, sausage, and a drink. We do have gluten-free, sugar-free, and meatless options available. You can order online or by calling the Senior Center at 523-1135, or you can just come that morning and also get just order right there. We are doing to-go orders as well and delivery within 5 miles. On May 5th, May 6th, we have the John J. Duncan Senior Awards. It's going to be a virtual reception, and it's honoring 2 individuals in our community, Aaron Bradley and Vivian Underwood Shipe. And I'd love for you all to participate with us. It will be, if you go to the knoxseniors.org website, you can get a link to watch it online at 4:30 p.m. on May 6th. And also we have a senior job fair event coming up on Wednesday, May 5th from 9 to 11. It'll actually be a walkthrough event in the parking lot of the Ross building, which is at 2247 Western Avenue. So this is for individuals 50 and over who might be job seeking. We will have employers on hand to discuss full and part-time positions. So if you want to know more about that, call us at 524-2786. And thank you all so much. I'm going to turn it over to Angela to introduce our speakers.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. Just some housekeeping rules before I start. Everyone's going to be muted, and I ask that you remain muted. We will have the presentation with the pharmacists from Max Pharmacy, and then at the end I will unmute everyone, and if you have any questions you'll be able to ask them then. If you are online and you are using, of course, the WebEx platform, there you will be able to chat and you can put questions in there if you have any while you're waiting or while we're watching the presentation. But until then, please write down your questions, hold your questions until the end, and we will get those taken care of. This meeting also is recorded, and so we'll be able to put that on YouTube, and you'd be able to watch it afterwards by going to our website at knoxseniors.org. But to get to the show, today's speakers are Matt Crawford and Hayley Pitt. They're both, they work at Max Pharmacy. Matt Crawford's a Knoxville native who graduated from the University of Tennessee in 2011 with a bachelor's degree in kinesiology, and he continued his education at UT College of Pharmacy, where he received his Doctor of Pharmacy degree in 2015. He has worked at Max Pharmacy since he graduated and enjoys taking care of his patients and the Washington Pike location. And Dr. Hayley Pitt is the PGY1 Community Pharmacy resident at Max Pharmacies and the University of Tennessee Health Science Center. Pitt is from Greeneville, Tennessee, where she lives with her husband, Kaleb Pitt, and younger brother, Dustin. She graduated from East Tennessee State University Bill Gatton College of Pharmacy in May of 2020. Congratulations. So welcome to our program, Matt and Hayley. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll let you take it away.
Thank you for that great introduction. We appreciate it. And want to thank you guys for letting us join in on your meeting and let us talk a little bit about prediabetes. So we're going to do a little bit of background to start off with on prediabetes. Then we're going to go in, most of the time it's going to be talking about prevention and treatment for prediabetes. Let's see here. Can everyone see the presentation, by the way? Okay, great. Like you're talking about, we are both pharmacists with Max Hometown Pharmacies. I do work at the location in North Knoxville, and Hayley actually works at Lowe's Drug in Maryville. So do a little quick shout out to us on there. The outline, what we're going to start out with is what is prediabetes? We'll talk about that. Some of the common causes of prediabetes, some associated risk factors for patients who could be potentially at risk for developing prediabetes or do have prediabetes, and we're trying to keep them from developing into full-blown type 2 diabetes. Some common symptoms that are associated with prediabetes and type 2 diabetes, and then Hayley's going to jump in on the prevention and treatment section of the presentation. So what is prediabetes? Prediabetes is when your blood sugar levels are higher than normal, but not yet high enough to be diagnosed as diabetes. One of the good things about prediabetes, if there is a good thing, is that it is completely reversible. Hopefully we can get that done with diet and exercise. Doctors typically want to try and get this reversed with lifestyle changes before introducing medications to patients. If we cannot get these levels back in the normal range, typically pre-diabetics will advance into type 2 diabetes, where medication is almost always used in getting their blood sugar back controlled. So got 88 million American adults have pre-diabetes. That's about 1 in every 3. So kind of shocking numbers right there. And even more shocking is about 84%, between 8 and 9 out of 10 adults don't even realize that they have prediabetes. So we will discuss some resources at the end for taking advantage of. If you're unsure if you're pre-diabetic or if you haven't tested your blood sugar in a while, some things to keep an eye on. So I will try and talk through a lot of this chart here since we have some people on the phone. What we're talking about here is the 3 main tests used for diagnosing diabetes. We got a normal range category on here, a pre-diabetic range category, and then a diabetic range. So most people are familiar with A1C tests by now. That has become the preferred method by most primary care physicians and endocrinologists for diagnosing diabetes. It is a measure of hemoglobin, which is a portion of the red blood cell, and how much glucose is attached to that red blood cell. The reason doctors like using this test is because it gives a 3-month kind of snapshot, little longer view than a fasting blood sugar test. So the goal for an adult is to have a A1C below 5.7%. The diagnostic number for type 2 diabetes, or type 1 for that fact, is 6.5% or above. So that leaves us kind of that middle of the road range there, which is prediabetes at 5.7 to 6.4. You're not in a good, healthy range on your sugar on that test, but you're also not enough to be diagnosed with diabetes. So this is an area where we really try to enforce lifestyle changes, whether that's diet or exercise, on patients to help get these numbers back down. The most common one that people are probably most familiar with is the fasting blood glucose test. And that's on an 8-hour fast. Typically it's done first thing in the morning, and under 100 is considered normal. Pre-diabetic range is 100 to 125, and 126 on that reading is what is considered diabetic. Most doctors will not technically diagnose after one test. They want to have 2 consecutive ones to diagnose as a diabetic off this test. The last one we'll touch on is the oral glucose tolerance test. If we got any mothers on the call here, this is probably one y'all are familiar with, where you drink that sugary drink and wait 2 hours and then see how your blood sugar is doing. What this is testing is to seeing if after you get sugar introduced to your system, how quickly you are getting that sugar out of your bloodstream into your muscles. On this test, 140 is considered normal after 2 hours. Pre-diabetic range would be 140 to 199, and to be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes would be 200 or above. And I guess not technically type 2 diabetes, but gestational diabetes. So a little bit about the pathophysiology as well. This is kind of the scientific version of what's causing prediabetes and diabetes in general. Cells in your body don't respond normally to insulin. The pancreas will then make more insulin to try to get cells to respond. Eventually, the pancreas can't keep up and your blood sugar rises, leading to prediabetes and potentially type 2 diabetes. So that's a real quick version. That image right there on the screen, if y'all can see it, that is where your pancreas is, and that is the organ responsible for producing insulin in the body. Some common risk factors that put you at an increased risk for prediabetes and diabetes is age. 40 years of age or older is a risk factor. Overweight or obese, also a risk factor. A family history of type 2 diabetes, that's immediate family. So a sibling or one of your parents is a type 2 diabetic, that counts as a risk factor. A sedentary lifestyle, so physically active less than 3 times per week. As for females, gestational diabetes, or actually giving birth to a 9-pound baby, counts as a risk factor as well. Polycystic ovary syndrome, that's typically diagnosed and seen in reproductive age females. That is a risk factor, and certain races and ethnicities are also can qualify as a risk factor. That includes African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Native Americans, Pacific Islanders, and some Asian Americans, not all of them. And one risk factor that is a big one is smoking. 30 to 40% increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes in current smokers versus non-smokers. On top of that, it's an increased risk of serious complications if you are diagnosed with diabetes. So heart disease, kidney disease, poor blood flow to legs and feet, which often leads to infections, ulcers, and potentially amputations in those patients. Symptoms of prediabetes, kind of similar to hypertension. Unless this starts advancing up to where it's getting closer to diabetes, may not have any symptoms at all. That's what's kind of scary with it, because even though you're not having symptoms, that higher level of blood glucose in your system is still causing damage to your body. But some of the symptoms, like I mentioned, are very similar to diabetes: frequent urination, thirst, hunger. That's even if you're eating, you can still feel hungry. Some fatigue, blurred vision. Cuts or bruises are slow to heal. A lot of that is due to just a decrease in blood flow. And then tingling, pain, or numbness in hands and feet. And that is just a sign of neuropathy developing. That is a very common symptom of diabetics. I'm going to let Hayley jump on here for a minute. She's going to talk about prevention of diabetes here.
Hi. So like they said, I am Hayley Pitt. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about prevention and treatment of prediabetes. So just to kind of start off, the biggest thing prevention in prediabetics is lifestyle changes. So what exactly does lifestyle changes mean? So Matt has said it several times actually. So we have weight loss. That is one of the biggest ones. Exercise, diet, and then that hard one that sometimes gets a lot of people is stopping smoking. So losing weight, we want to try to target about 10 to 15 pounds in the average person. That actually can equivalent in a 200-pound person about 5 to 7% of their body weight. And so just to kind of give you some statistics, excess weight is the single most important cause of type 2 diabetes. This increases your chances of developing type 2 diabetes 7 times more than then losing weight can help cut your chances in half. So, you know, being overweight increases your chances 7 times over, but actually losing those 10 to 15 pounds cuts your chances in half of developing type 2 diabetes. Regular activity, so exercise. So when we say regular activity, we want to target about 30 minutes 5 days a week. And we want to make that equal to about a brisk walk. So we want our heart rate to get pumping where we can feel it, where we're moving. You don't necessarily have to be sweating and completely out of breath, but we do want to make sure that we're kind of getting our heart rate up a little bit, and that way we're burning those calories. At least 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, and this total is about 150 minutes in total per week. To give you a little bit more perspective, every 2 hours that we spend watching TV instead of pursuing something active increases our chances of developing diabetes by 20%, heart disease by 15%, and early death by 13%. So those are some pretty big numbers in terms of our lifestyle in general. I kind of skipped through this a little bit, but early treatment of prediabetes can actually keep you from progressing to type 2 diabetes. Some of these lifestyle changes aren't easy to do alone. And so that's why we have, you know, our doctor's offices, but also us as pharmacists can help go through these questions with you in terms of, you know, what are we eating? How are we doing in terms of activity? And then this also goes back into losing 7% of your body weight helps lower your risk by about 58%. So in terms of diet, what do we really need to be eating? That is a big question. So number one of them all, we need to skip the sugary drinks. There was a study done, and this actually can help people lose just 5 pounds alone. So stopping the big coffee, sugary drinks, and just going, you know, straight black coffee, or stopping the Mountain Dews and the Dr. Peppers. I know sometimes that's very hard for people, I be included. The sweet tea in the South is very hard as well on our bodies in terms of sugar. We want to choose healthy fats. And I know sometimes that's kind of hard to understand what is a healthy fat. So just to kind of give you some ideas, so we want to use things like olive oil, or there's some like seed oils. We have avocados, olives, nuts, so like almonds, pecans, walnuts, tofu. Sometimes it may be best to substitute our whole milk for soy milk. That's something that I like to do. Coconut milk is also a good alternative. And then kind of our fatty fish such as salmon and tuna. And we do want to limit red meats. I know sometimes people really like eating those steaks. And so we want to make sure that we're limiting that to, you know, at least once a week. You know, if you love those steaks, we need to be cutting back on those, you know, and it may not be all at once. So starting with one thing and cutting back on it, and then picking another thing and cutting back on that. And then we want to choose whole grain and whole grain products over those refined grains. So in turn, we want more of the fish with omega-3, so that's salmon and tuna. We want the vegetables, so carrots, field greens, beans, corns, sweet potatoes. We can have some fruits, but some of them have a lot of natural sugar, so we need to be careful on that. And we also want more high fiber, such as our whole grains. And then we want less than 1,500 milligrams of sugar, or of sodium per day. We do want to limit our alcohol intake. So on average, that's about 1 drink per day for women and 2 drinks per day for men is what we need to limit that, because alcohol can in turn cause our sugar to go up as well. And then foods with those added sugars and unhealthy fats. So sometimes that means that fast food options, they cook that and those unhealthy fats, and that can make it very hard on our bodies to digest. So the next thing a lot of people struggle with is portion control. So for those of you that can't see our screen, think of a plate laying in front of you. So you want to take that plate and you want to cut it in half. 1/2 of that we need to keep with vegetables. So vegetables such as broccoli, green beans, cauliflowers, a tossed green salad, tomatoes, okras, peppers, those really non-starchy vegetables. So we really don't want like all of that potatoes, you know, because that would be very starchy. But having different varieties of vegetables on half of our plate is kind of what our goal is. And then on the other half of the plate, we're going to split that in half again. So 1/4 would be our lean meat and alternatives. So we have our grilled chicken, our skinless chicken. We can have our lean cut beefs, so like 95, 97% beefs. Pork, eggs, we can substitute that tofu in there or some kind of meat alternatives. Fish, shrimp as well. You have to be careful with shrimp in terms of heart disease, but you know, just as in terms of diabetes, shrimp could be an option as well. And we also can throw on nuts in that category as well, because that can be a meat alternative as well. Now, the other 1/4, we want our grain foods. So this would be what a lot of us like. So our breads, our pastas, our rice, things like that. But we do want to make sure that we're limiting that to 1/4 of our plate. So just to remind you again, half our plate is vegetables. 1/4 of the plate is lean meats and alternatives. And then the 1/4 is grainy foods. And I think that kind of summary wise, just kind of going back over that, the 2 biggest prevention and lifestyle treatments for prediabetes is those lifestyle changes. So our diet and exercise are the 2 biggest ways that we can have an impact on prediabetes. Anyone have any questions? Oh, yeah, sorry.
We attached a couple resources here for you guys to take a look at. A lot of people don't even, like we were talking about before, most people who are pre-diabetic don't even realize that they are. So maybe that cdc.gov, that pre-diabetes risk test would be a good place to start, just to kind of answer some questions and see if you are even kind of in that pre-diabetic category or even kind of getting close to it based off some risk factors. Couple good programs as well. American Diabetes Association, with that group, along with the CDC, has invested a lot of time and money into diabetes control. One, because it can develop into a very debilitating disease, not only for patients, but also their families. It can take a toll on the entire family, as well as developing into a very costly disease. Medications for diabetes are very expensive. And also hospitalization outcomes for diabetics versus non-diabetics, they typically always have a worse outcome across the board, diabetics do versus non-diabetics. So just trying to help them out and use some of these programs. And even if you haven't tested your blood sugar in a while and you're just not sure, just stop into a pharmacy and they can take your blood sugar real quick and just let you know. So that's probably the easiest way to do it. Just go in there on an 8-hour fast, don't eat anything from 10 o'clock, and go in first thing in the morning and just ask the pharmacist if they can test your blood sugar real quick. And hopefully you're under 100. If you're not, if you're up above that, then maybe kind of use that as a little kind of kick in the tail to maybe a wake up call for you. So Yeah, those are some good links there to kind of, if you do need some help or want to research a little bit further, I like those links right there. And then also here's our contact information. That's the store phone numbers where Hayley and I work at. If you have any further questions, I've also put our email addresses on there. And I don't know, Angela, if you want to send this out, or I can send you a copy of the PowerPoint, or we can.
Yeah, that would be great. We can get Sharon to send it out. We can also put it in the event page on Facebook. And then, of course, this presentation will be on YouTube.
Okay, great. Perfect. All righty. Well, I think that's all we have is in terms of the presentation. But if y'all have any questions, we'd love to open it up to anybody who may have a question.
I can unmute everyone. If you do not have a question, go ahead and mute yourself again. If you're on the phone, I believe *6 will unmute you if you do have a question.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So it was one of the first slides that Matt did. So if somebody's already diabetic and they have their numbers are over 126, if they reduce their weight and do some lifestyle changes, is there a chance that they would lower their glucose levels?
Yes, so that is possible, but the odds of the diabetic becoming their numbers back down becomes a lot harder than that pre-diabetic range going back down to the normal range. Your body makes adjustments, how it's processing insulin and processing carbohydrates and glucose in the body. The percentage of people getting back from a diabetic diagnosis down to pre-diabetic and even down to normal is much slimmer than a pre-diabetic person getting down to just in a normal range. So yes, it is possible, but it's more and more unlikely the higher that sugar goes.
Thank you.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I just found out that I'm pre-diabetic. When I went back and had my sugar checked again, they said I went down 2 points, but I quit drinking alcohol and tried to make some diet changes. But the biggest struggle that I'm having right now is I don't understand all these numbers that I have on these papers. Which one is the most important number? It says I'm high in like the MCV and MCHC and the one that says glucose, the 131, is that the one that I need to pay attention to?
Yeah, so the other one is that's kind of has a lot more to do with your blood. So that they take those blood numbers as well, but we do want to focus on those glucose numbers. So the glucose, and then also the there should be an A1C percentage on there as well.
They put me on a medicine called metformin. Is that good for lowering my blood sugar? And are there other medicines available if that stops working?
So there is other medicines available. Generally, anybody who is diagnosed with diabetes is almost always started out on metformin. Metformin has been shown to be the best in terms of newly diabetics and diabetics in general in terms of how it works. So yeah, metformin is a great option. It does have side effects as well as most drugs, but yeah, definitely that is a good option.
What are the side effects? Because that seems like here lately my appetite has definitely been increased. I don't know if that's just spending too much time at home because of the pandemic, or if it might be because of the medicine.
It is very meal dependent, so it might not necessarily increase your appetite, but it definitely is it's going to depend on, when you eat with it. The side effects generally are in terms of like diarrhea is one of the biggest ones with that. And then if some people who are on it long term can have some different vitamin deficiencies with it.
Okay. So the main numbers I want to pay attention to on these numbers are the one that says glucose. It says E average glucose or VAG glucose, MG/DL. Is that the most important number?
Yes.
Okay. And a lot of things, like I'm really trying to learn, a lot of stuff has sugar in it already, like tons of sugar in it. It seems like looking back and paying more attention to it now that all I did was eat sugar. And I'm just struggling, trying to change my eating habits. It's like a really a big blow when, you know, I don't smoke cigarettes, but I like candy. So
Right.
I don't know.
The fresher the food, the better.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And someone had put in the chat, they had asked that I mentioned corn in the midst of vegetables. Shouldn't someone watch how much corn or potatoes they are eating? Yes. So generally, you want to keep that to a half a cup to a fourth a cup in terms of corn, and even you want those potatoes to be even smaller. Depending on, you don't want to eat potatoes every day because those are very starchy, but obviously you want to keep, you know, changing which vegetables you are eating, because if you eat the same thing every single day, it's going to get old.
And also, I didn't have a chance to write down those sites that y'all had up. Can y'all mail us a copy of those sites or put them back up again where I can copy them down?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, let me get a pen.
The remaining percentage?
So you mentioned that shrimp wasn't a good choice for those with heart disease. Is there a lot of sodium in shrimp? I mean, maybe a stupid question. I just never thought of it that way.
Yes, so there is a lot of sodium, and also it causes your cholesterol to raise. It's one of the bigger ones in terms of cholesterol.
It's good to know.
Can you hear me? Can you hear
Yes.
me? Oh, okay. I have a question while she's writing that down. Could you explain the recent provision for lower insulin cost, and how would that work for my clients? I'm in the Amos program, so I help them with their prescriptions.
Yeah, so the recent provision that I believe through our last President Trump kind of made some headway with this one. Certain insulins are available for a $35 cost. So that was the biggest thing that he had going in terms of that. So we have had some patients, because at our North Knoxville location, we take care of some lower income Medicare patients. They have taken care of that provision. It's not automatically done, so it may take a little legwork on getting on the phone with the insurance company or the pharmacy benefit manager to get that, make sure that's in place. But yeah, if there is a patient who would qualify based off income, yeah, I would reach out to them. Not only is it a $35 copay, but that full price isn't factoring in on their deductible as well. So
My clients that are in that category, I've got them all on the extra help program. So $35 is more than what they're paying.
Okay.
Except maybe if they're on a plan and the drug they're using is not on the formulary, then it would be higher.
So
It's not helping as much as I had hoped.
Yeah, if that, this is kind of more for the Medicare patients when it rolls around to their deductible and say January hits and they're being asked to pay $300, $400 for their insulin when they're used to $47. So it's maybe your patients, if they are qualifying for that extra help, it may not be as beneficial. But for patients that aren't quite qualified for that extra help, there is I think a niche window for them to draw some benefit and cost savings on this
Okay.
thing.
Can the pharmacist do that by calling the company, or?
No, it has to come from the patient, unfortunately. They don't let us do a whole lot of legwork. But I believe if the prescribing physician is allowed to call and try and request it as well. kind of like a prior authorization. I don't know if you're familiar with getting those approved. It's kind of the same process where the doctor can call and explain why a patient needs it. Unfortunately, the pharmacist, all we're allowed to do is notify a prescriber that a prior authorization is required, and they have to kind of take it from there. So,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
These websites, are these like support groups, or are they like where you can ask questions, or?
Those first two are not, but that one on the bottom, the National Diabetes Prevention Program, that one's a really good one. If you're wanting something a little bit more in depth, that could get you into some talk groups or support group type deals. They can, a whole lot of things associated with that program, whether it's diet help, cookbooks, recipes, exercise plans. That one's a really, really in-depth one that the CDC does. And I really like that one. The acronym that you may hear from it is NDPP, and they've invested a lot of time and money into those programs. So they try to make them regional as well. So you may find one that's based out of Tennessee or East Tennessee in particular, to see if maybe you can partner up with somebody a little bit more local to you.
Well, if you don't make some serious changes, you will get type 2 diabetes pretty much. Is that the way it works?
Not automatically, but typically, if you're not watching, if you are diagnosed with prediabetes, so those 88 million people that have prediabetes, about 2 million people a year progress into type 2 diabetes. So it may not be right away or automatic or even close, but we have people that are becoming pre-diabetic at younger and younger ages. So we've got, 25, 30-year-old pre-diabetics. Unfortunately, they've had to do away with the terminology juvenile diabetes because they've got kids in early high school, late middle school that are developing type 2 diabetes due to sedentary lifestyle, eating too much sugar. So it may not be sudden, but typically if you're pre-diabetic, odds are if you don't get some lifestyle changes, you probably will progress to type 2 diabetic, unfortunately.
This has been real helpful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have any questions? Again, if you're on the phone, it's *6 to unmute yourself. Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. This was a very informative presentation. And once again, we can put this presentation on our Facebook page. It'll be on YouTube and our webpage, knoxseniors.org afterwards. Our next presentation / meeting is going to be on May 13th, and the topic is gardening for your health. So Beardsley Farm with the CAC is going to be presenting on how to get a garden started, the health benefits of having a garden and gardening. So whether you have to garden in containers due to space, or you are able to get with a community garden or start your own garden in your backyard, they'll have topics and tips for everyone. So I hope you'll join us. Basically here, the same link, 2:30 Thursday, May 13th. Thank you, Matt and Hayley, for being here. We appreciate you guys, and
What
we'll
about
see you
apples? Apples.
What about apples?
Does apples have too much sugar in it? Is it okay to eat one every day?
Yeah,
Hello?
it's okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes. So apples do have some natural sugar, but it is okay to eat at least, at most 1 apple a day.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know because I thought it had too much sugar in it. Okay, I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Natural sugar is
Thank
a
you.
little bit different than processed sugar, so it's okay to have it, occasionally.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad to hear that.
You're welcome.
And I enjoyed it. Enjoyed listening to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. How about them apples? We'll see you guys next time. Have a good one. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.